Level up your LA Kings experience with Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access and rewards. Enjoy great seats to the game in Section 103 along with Yamava Club access and parking included with your purchase. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings shop item at the game. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn perks on each purchase from the only leading ticket company with a rewards program. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings. Do you know the LA Kings have their own culinary partner? It's Superfood, celebrating 10 years and over 1 million meals served. Since 2020, the Kings have trusted Superfood to fuel their players. Now through Simply Lunch, you can bring that same performance-driven food to your office. Because when people eat better, they work better. Visit mysuperfood.com. That's mysuperfd.com. Or call 213-973-6145. Qualified companies can enjoy a free lunch for up to 10 managers.
Donnie Brzezinski moves in after Kevin Ball broke up a possible breakaway. That shot is in! Erik Gustafsson, the defenseman. Joe talked about his offensive skills.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings.
In the first minute, Kessel, great pass in front. They score! Perunovich, his first NHL goal! And the Blues have tied the game.
Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
All right, welcome back to another episode of All the Kings Men. Joining me today, head coach of the Grand Rapids Griffins, Dan Watson. How are you doing today, Dan?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
So we're here today to talk about Erik Gustafsson, but before we do that, Dan, I was taking a look at your career, and I discovered that you played at least part of 2 seasons for the Long Beach Ice Dogs.
I did. Two of my best seasons, actually. I did get injured my second season, which kind of led me to coaching, to be honest with you. I was on the bench running the defense at the time, and that would have been 2005, 2006. But I did spend 2 years of my life in Southern California. Enjoyed every second of it. And, it's too bad the Long Beach Ice Dogs still aren't there.
Yeah.
I know they've moved to Ontario, to the American League now, which is obviously a great step up. But again, I love my time there.
Well, I was an inaugural Long Beach Ice Dog season ticket holder. I had since moved out of Long Beach by the time you had come to play there, but fond memories of the Ice Dogs and the building with the whales on the outside of it.
Oh, yeah. You know how many times I was walking out of practice or 2 practices, got asked where the aquarium is. Is this
right.
the aquarium?
Yeah.
Nope, it's down the street. This is the arena.
Yeah. So, all right, Eric, so let's talk about Erik Gustafsson, because he signed by the LA Kings as a free agent. And my assumption, Dan, when he was signed was that he would essentially replace Jacob Muvraari as the 7th defenseman on the roster. But looking at his resume and seeing that he played with Peter Laviolette for the New York Rangers, he's been an NHL defenseman most of his career. Last season, he spent 39 games in the AHL. In your estimation, is Erik Gustafsson an NHL defenseman?
Yeah, I think that he put himself right back into that conversation with the way he performed for us in Grand Rapids, and not just on the ice. His attitude off the ice, his commitment to winning, his commitment to being the best teammate he could be, and again, his commitment to teaching the young kids how to really be a pro. I can't speak highly enough of the character that he had when he came down. And he had choices. He had 2 choices, really. Either show up and be grumpy and be miserable and kind of be a bad teammate, or be the best version of himself. And he did the latter part of that. He was incredible for all parts of us in Grand Rapids. And I think with the way he played, with the way he carried himself, it showed that he still wants to be in the NHL, still can play in the NHL. And he's going to hopefully get that opportunity with LA.
The Kings have had veteran players in the past who were signed or brought back, I should say, to the organization. And then when given that opportunity that you just talked about to play in the AHL, kind of very politely begged off of it. I'm thinking specifically of Rob Scuderi. Played for the Kings during their cup run, and then a few years later was brought back. And when they sort of hinted that he might be, assigned to Ontario, they gave him the option of maybe not participating. part of that, I imagine, is that the role a player plays in the NHL can be very different from the role they play in the AHL. Maybe they get more minutes, more responsibility in the AHL. What kind of player was Erik Gustafsson for you last year in Grand Rapids?
Well, I think Gus provided some offense. Certainly has a great vision on the ice. Very good on the power play. And so I don't think his role and the way he needed to play changed that much from the NHL to the American League. Counted on again to be a power play guy, counted on to provide some offense. And he played bigger minutes in Grand Rapids. Certainly was on our top pair, played well over 20, 25 minutes a game for us in important parts of the game. Maybe he didn't see that or feel that in Detroit. But again, he didn't have to change too much. But again, it was an opportunity for him to showcase who he was, how he could still produce offensively, and with his hope of getting back to the NHL, whether it was with Detroit or another organization. So he didn't have to change too much coming down. What he needed to do is just make sure that he stayed at that high level of play.
Now, you said that when you were with the Long Beach Ice Dogs, that's when you started getting into coaching. You said you were looking after the D sometimes on the bench there.
Yeah.
If Erik Gustafsson does wind up spending significant time as the 7th D on the roster, is he the type of player that can get into a player like Brant Clark's ear and maybe help him develop some of the finer points of his game on the power play?
Oh, I think he can for sure. He enjoyed spending time with all the prospects, with their whole team, but specifically a lot of the young defensemen we had. He was talking to them all the time about his experiences, how he handles certain situations. He talked to us as coaches. He's been around a lot of really good NHL coaches and gave us some insights. So he's willing to share that. He's willing to communicate and talk to the young players. I've seen it firsthand. And so if he's not in the lineup every night, you're still getting a valuable resource to any player that's in the lineup there in LA. And he's willing to do that. I know he is. And he's a leader. He was a leader for us in Grand Rapids, and maybe didn't wear a letter. He didn't, maybe didn't carry himself like that off the ice in terms of, because he had his family, he was driving back and forth to Detroit. But when he was at the arena, he was dialed in and was willing to help in any way possible.
We've reached a point in the hockey world now where height and weight are sort of synonymous with what kind of player you are. Erik Gustafsson's right on that bubble where it's 6 foot, 190 pounds. He's not small, but he's not particularly oversized. Is he a modern NHL defenseman where he gets by on skating and speed, or is he a more traditional, to use that phrase, stay-at-home defenseman?
No, he gets by with using his smarts, his IQ, and his feet. He still defends well. He still gets up the ice and can read the play, read it, develop before it happens, can jump in the play, understands, risk versus reward. And so I think he's valuable in that. He's going to defend differently than a big, rugged 6'4" physical defenseman, but he can still defend responsibly. And we saw that. I think he got better, even with us when he came to Grand Rapids. Stick details, one key when you're undersized, getting inside of hands versus maybe trying to be physical and using your body in a different way than a bigger, more physical defenseman, the traditional style. So he can get away with being in good position, using his body the right way, using his stick the right way, and around the net, maybe having that ability to front pucks more versus box guys out when you're undersized. He understands that, and we saw him do that numerous times in Grand Rapids.
One question I love to ask when we speak to coaches about incoming players is how do they handle adversity? You've pretty much touched on it. It sounds like he handles it really well from a macro level. How does he handle in-game adversity? If he gets a bad beat out there on the ice, or a man gets past him, or he blows some coverage, how is he on the bench? How's his body language?
Well, he was really good for us. Yes, he cares deeply about his own level of play, the team's level of play. He's very communicative on the bench and down the bench towards all the players. But he's also he's hard on himself. He wants the best. He wants to play the best he possibly can. And so, there were moments and times where he would get frustrated or would get mad, but that was at himself. It wasn't at his teammates. It wasn't, there's never a time where he turned it negative towards a team. He was a very positive guy, very uplifting. Even when things weren't going right with the team in certain games, he was a guy skating down the bench saying, hey, we're better than this. Let's get back to playing our game. He was very good. Again, he was very good to keep it sort of level without getting the emotions too high or too low for the team or himself. But like every player, there's definitely moments where he knew he could play better and he would own that. And the next game, he was certainly better. So good for him. He's a mature player in that sense. And, he can only grow in those areas and be able to share and rub off on any of the players that he's around.
You had a handful of Swedes on the roster last year in Grand Rapids, but he was the oldest. Did he take on a particularly, did he run that part of the clubhouse? Was he, shepherding the younger Swedes in particular, or was he there for all the teammates equally?
He was there for all the teammates particularly, but, he did. He was certainly the Swedish dad, if you will, with all the young Swedes that we had. But you know what? He was very good around the locker room and making sure the Swedes, they spoke English, so everyone understood what was going on. But when it was time, he definitely, especially our D-core in the playoffs, Antti Tuomisto, who's now with Las Vegas, he's from Finland, but speaks Swedish. We had 6 Swedish defensemen starting the playoffs for us. And, between him and William Lagesson, those two guys, they made sure that our young guys were prepared. They held them in check. They helped them along the way, and including our forwards. It gave us when we're confident and comfortable with those two guys as our leaders back there, being from Sweden and having the amount of Swedes we had, they were able to just sort of, whether it's speak the language, get them to understand a different way. I saw them outside the bus in a circle talking Swedish. I'm sure they had some good meals at Erik's house, or if he was in town, went to someone else's house to cook and make sure they're eating the right things. But you could always see him making sure they were engaged, making sure they understood everything, but also not alienating them or making a clique of just the Swedish guys. He brought them into the group at all times.
Final question, and I'll let you go. I don't know what the fan base or the fan culture is like in Grand Rapids. Apologies, but how is he with the fans out there in Grand Rapids?
Oh, he's excellent. He's extremely personable. Obviously with him having young kids and family, he understands the responsibility that comes with being a professional athlete. And, anytime that we had fan engagements, he wanted to be there, whether he could be with his family ties being in Detroit still. Again, he made that commute 2 hours there and back. So, but with the fans, the pucks over the glass during warm-ups, the giving of the sticks when appropriate. He's very appreciative of his time in Grand Rapids. And again, we do have a great fan base here, averaging between 8,000 and 9,000 fans a game. And he was excellent with everybody, and not just the fans, the front office staff, all the support staff that we have. LA is getting truly a good human being, and that's all part of it.
Excellent. Well, that's wonderful to hear. Dan Watson, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you joining me today, and have a good rest of the summer, and best of luck next season in Grand Rapids.
All right. Thanks, Jesse. Much appreciated.
Joining me today, head coach of the Tucson Roadrunners, Steve Potvin. How are you doing today, Steve?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. We're here to talk about Scott Perunovich, but before we do that, your assistant coach played 60 games for the LA Kings, John Slaney, once upon a time. How's John Slaney doing?
John Slaney is doing great. He tells us all about his moments, his time in LA. I mean, he played with the great ones, so I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
And listen, I was just sort of scanning over the stuff, and I said, I recognize that name. And I was like, I recognize Zach Stortini's name too, the other assistant coach. I was like, I know John Slaney played for the Kings. I don't think Zach Stortini ever did, but it turns out John Slaney did, in fact, play for the Kings. So my first question about Scott Perunovich is, it's more about the Kings than it is Scott. The Kings signed Erik Gustafsson and Scott Perunovich as free agents this summer. And I think everybody assumes that Erik Gustafsson is the seventh defenseman option behind the sixth defenseman that played for the Kings last season. But looking at Scott Perunovich's numbers, looking at his highlights in Tucson, looking at the breadth of his career, I'm not so sure. I mean, is Scott Perunovich an NHL defenseman who just finds himself temporarily stuck in the AHL?
Well, I think it's with him. I think it's the choice, right? I think he can look at the scale himself, and he's either going to find a way to push through and challenge himself, and he's got all the ability and the hockey know-how to take that next step and be a full-time NHL player. There's no doubt about that. And I think if he gets off to a good start and plays a real competitive brand, which we've seen, he's going to he's going to give himself an opportunity. He's going to definitely turn some heads.
Now, looking at the Reign, and I'm going to ask you to coach a different team for a second here. Looking at the Reign roster, they have their own, roster of defensemen: Kirsanov, Dvorak, Woolley, Booth, Celine, Hicketts, Brustevich, Millar, etc. But is he? He had an incredible season for you guys last year. If he's on the Reign roster, he's playing every night, right? I mean, is he a top pair guy? It certainly looks like it based on his numbers.
Oh, there's no doubt. He had he had a great season with us, an excellent season. And if you talk to him about it, he thinks he could have definitely have done better. And I think I agree with him. There were some pockets there where, his game kind of slid a little bit for no reason other than being in the American League and sometimes being caught up in, the call-up game and if there's going to be opportunity or not. And it's a real thing to have those types of thoughts, right? And so I think there are some games there where, he could have probably handled certain situations a little bit differently. And I think he would agree with it. And when he had the mindset aligned with how he needs to play, he's exceptional. He's definitely one of the top D in the league, and he can control the game from the back end. And listen, our driving possession plays significantly increased when he was on the ice, and we were a lot better team with him.
Watching highlights of him, he's obviously got an incredible shot. He's not abundantly large, he's on the smaller side. Is he a modern NHL defenseman where he gets by with skating and puck handling? Does he have a physical element to his game? He's only 5'10", but he looks maybe a little bit smaller than that.
No, there's a lot of moments where you can see, the competitive side of him really come out, and there was some times against Ontario, actually, Ontario had a great season last year. They're at the top of the league and they were fighting for first place near the end. And we were trying to find ways to beat them. And the competitive nature just really came out of him at the end of the season. And you could see him elevate the physical side of him. I don't think he wakes up in the morning looking to be the physical type player. I think his offensive attributes are what make him really special. A lot of players, we ask them to see the next play and be involved with the next one. Well, for him, he's already seen the next play, and it's more about the next play. He's just that smart. So he does have a competitive spirit about him, and when he does use it, he's very dangerous, and he'll use it at the appropriate time to send our bench and now your bench a message that it's go time.
So he won the Hobey Baker Award. I'm assuming he must be oozing with leadership.
Well, the thing is about leadership, right? Sometimes the best players, they don't ask to be leaders, but they just are because everybody watches them and how they behave, and it's just natural to behave like they do. You want to, they're the easiest people to spot. So I think, there's some accountability that he has and he holds himself to, and there's another side of him that you have to remind him of how much of a leader he is and the ripple that he has. But there's no doubt when he is a focused player, he is definitely somebody you want to follow and an easy guy to follow.
So I was binging all of my Scott Perunovich content in preparation for our conversation, and I saw a video of him wearing a fedora that was terribly out of place on him. And it was at his Hobey Baker Award ceremony, and he addressed it, and he said, His grandfather had passed a few months earlier. His grandmother had gone cleaning out their attic or something and discovered it. Thought he might look good in it, asked him to wear it, commented that he looked good in it. So he continued to wear his grandfather's fedora because it made his grandmother happy. And I just thought, wow, that's an incredible story. And B, it just speaks a lot in my mind to him that he would, because I mean, listen, no disrespect to him or his grandfather, but a fedora in 2020, well, I guess it was 2022 or whatever year it was, but it's not exactly fashionable, but he didn't seem to mind if it made his grandmother happy. Does that sound like the guy that you know?
100%. There's a lot of depth with this individual. There's little things like that matter, and family does matter to him. And sometimes you wouldn't necessarily think that he's that type of person, right? But there's a lot of depth. He's a strong character. Family means a lot. Teammates mean a lot. He's gonna, if he respects the room and respects the people that he plays for and with, you're going to get a lot out of this person. And he's definitely a person that we're looking to have back, and we're going to miss him.
This is a standard question that I tend to ask whenever a new player joins the organization. How does he handle adversity? If he has a bad night, or if the team gets a bad loss, gives up a goal late in the third period or something to have the game snatched away, how is he in the locker room? How does he handle that kind of moment?
He takes responsibility. He's one of those guys, right? He wants the puck on his stick. He wants to do well. He wants to be the difference maker, and he does take responsibility. Now, he's one of those players that can also snap back, and through the process of absorbing, reflecting, and refining, he's able to get back to his game. But there's no doubt about it that he takes the ownership of his mistakes and the ownership of his game. He sees himself as a top player, and he is, and he wants to be that. He wants to demonstrate that every night. He takes full accountability and responsibility for his mistakes and how he plays, whether it's good or bad.
I have no idea what the fan culture is like in Tucson. I have family who lived in Tucson. I've enjoyed every time I've been to Tucson, but I don't know what the hockey community is like out there. How is he? I mean, he's only there for a year, but how is he with the fans? How is he in the community?
Well, they love him, right? They love him. He's an intelligent person. The Hobie Baker, it doesn't really announce intelligence, but you played in the NCAA and you're an elite player. You do a lot of smart work, and you're an intelligent person. You're elite. To be able to win a Hobie and play the way he does, he sees the game very well, and he responds well to people, and he's able to communicate well. So he had a very strong response, and a lot of good people followed him. I mean, they saw the quality of work that he displayed on the ice, and he was an easy person to cheer for. There's no doubt about it. And listen, at the end of the year, he was a difference maker for us. He was a large reason why we were able to win some games down the stretch.
I'm going to ask a question that you certainly won't know the answer to, and it's borderline unfair, but every year at training camp, every fan base has the same conversation of which guys are going to get claimed if they get sent to the, if they do get assigned to the AHL team, which guy is going to get claimed on waivers. And every year, myself and other people, in and around the industry sort of roll our eyes and go, every team has more than enough guys. Very rarely does somebody get claimed. But I'm looking at Scott Perunovich, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, maybe he would. Is he the kind of guy that, if were it up to you, would you put in a claim on Scott Perunovich?
Well, yes, depending on what your team needs, right? If you need a power play quarterback or somebody that's going to be able to make the next play with volume, then yes, I would definitely, put a claim in for him 100%. And if you get an opportunity to have him on your roster long enough and with the NHL team, and he does get sent back down, for sure that you're able to have a seventh D that can come in and do a job and do it well. So, the makeup of the game is changing a little bit, but look, at the end of the day, I think a lot of teams all kind of want to start with that bigger, robust style type team that you can defend hard and be able to attack when the opposition is weak. So, I think they're going to look for the bigger man at first, but if he comes in at camp and he has a real strong showing, then I can see some teams definitely jumping on him if he does get sent down.
Well, the LA Kings training camp should have at least a handful of interesting stories, and I think Scott Perunovich just makes the conversation on defense that much more interesting. Steve Potvin, thank you so much for your time today, and good luck out there in Tucson next year, or this year, I guess.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for having us on. Anytime you want to talk hockey, I'm your man. Let's go.